been in the music business for 48 years. I've been touring for 45 years. In 45 years, I've been shot once, stabbed twice. I've survived 2 cardiac arrests. I walked away from 2 plane crashes, 3 bus crashes, 4 bus fires, fell out of a truss at 18 feet, OD'd once, and had guns pulled on me 4 other times. Now, ask me why I believe in God and why I can't sleep.
Yeah.
Anything that doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and you have to face your fears.
Today on Geezes of Gear, we're excited to welcome back Tim Quake Mark, a legendary front-of-house engineer, production manager, and tour manager with more than 40 years in the music industry. Quake has worked with some of rock's biggest names, including Slash featuring Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators, Stone Temple Pilots, Goo Goo Dolls, Jack's Mannequin, Tracy Chapman, and Jane's Addiction. His career spans thousands of shows across theaters, arenas, stadiums, and festivals worldwide, mastering front-of-house sound, tour logistics, and full-scale production. Along the way, Quake has survived multiple bus and plane incidents, on-the-road emergencies, and serious health challenges, earning the respect of artists and crews alike. Beyond touring, Quake is the founder of Workshop Management and High Concept Sync, a partner at SAD Summer Festival, and a touring sales consultant for Video West, helping shape the future of live production. Known for his expertise, grit, and passion, Quake is a true icon in live entertainment. Welcome, Tim Quake Mark. Well, hello there, Mr. Tim Quake Mark. So
How are you?
that sounds like a lot of names, to be honest with you.
Well, as I tell everybody, the only thing I ever got free in my whole life was my given name. I earned the nickname Quake, and that's why I use it. You know, that, and I work with a lot of people named Tim, and it's just easier to just go Quake. And unless you're a rapper, you don't know too many Quakes in the tech side.
That's
of the
true.
business.
That's true too.
Yeah.
And Quake, I would guess, has something to do with you being a little bit loud, or
actually, no. It's funny. When I was in high school, well, actually, growing up, I was like a semi-professional actor. And at 16, I took my first job with a band. And I had to take 3 months off, do a production of Little Abner. And I played the part of Earthquake Magoon, the old retired wrestler that chased Daisy May.
Right.
Now, I've been 5'10", 200 and some odd pounds since I was 14 years old. So I was always a big guy. And all the guys in the band came out and saw the show and said, wow, you're actually pretty good at that acting stuff. What are you doing working for us? I'm like, you pay better. And they first show back, I went to go jump onto the drum riser, and I tripped and fell, knocked the drum kit over, broke every cymbal the guy had. He stood up, threw his sticks at me, called me a goddamn earthquake. 48 years later, that's what I'm known as.
Yeah, there you go. I'm sure you told me that story on our first podcast, but that was 5 years ago, and a lot has happened since then.
That's true.
It was actually almost exactly 5 years ago, because it was October 2020 when you were on our podcast.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Wow. Holy cow.
So,
and a lot has happened. But funny, when you mentioned about the Quake and the sound, when I started doing touring in earnest in the mid 80s, I would show up to venues and I'd find compressors in places I would never think of putting them. And they're like, well, you're going to blow stuff up. I'm like, I've been mixing for 48 years, and in 48 years, I can count on 2 hands how many drivers I've blown. And most of them were because an amp went DC or something. It wasn't actually me. I was taught very early on how to hear clipping, so I know, oh, that's bad. Let's not do that. My first real tour was with Billy Sheehan's band Talus in 1980, and we opened for Van Halen. And after like the first 2 weeks of working with the band, the owner of the sound company went, I don't know about this kid. He hasn't blown anything up yet. Yeah. And I'm like, well, isn't that the idea? I replaced the other guy who had a collection of blown drivers at this one store in Buffalo, Yeah. And he probably went through 200 some odd drivers in a year,
Wow. Yeah, I remember the Talus story that you told on our last podcast, because I was actually a fan of Talus back then, and then after that, Racer X, which I think had a couple of guys from Talus, and
Well, Mr. Big had one of the guitar players from Racer X and Billy Sheehan.
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but Billy Sheehan was obviously in Talus. Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's funny that I did Stone Temple Pilots all the way through 24, and we had a young lighting guy by the name of Tyler Armentrout from Chicago working with us. And oh gosh, was it 22, 23, somewhere in there? We're pulling up to a festival in Sacramento, and we're talking about all these people that I know that he knows. And he's like, "Do you know somebody everywhere?" And I'm like, "Well, I didn't know you until a year ago."
yeah,
And we pull up outside the hotel in Sacramento. We're going to play Aftershock, one of those Danny Wimmer festivals. And there's a guy in the middle of the street trying to back up us. And I'm, "Shaw, get the hell out of the road." "Oh, hey,
yeah.
Quake." And then the bus driver drops out.
That's
"Oh, Quake, oh
hilarious.
my God." And he's like, in a parking lot in the middle of Sacramento, you know somebody. I'm like, I was his sound guy back when he was a musician. And the
Yeah,
bus driver's driven me a dozen times. So we go do a bunch more shows, and he was dumbfounded when we showed up at Aftershock, and we're the second to the last band on the second stage. And during the day, he goes, the headliner people all showed up to say hello to you. The people from the main stage, all the stage crew from there came over to say hello to you. Guys from other bands were walking over and, "Hey, Quake, hey, Quake." I'm like, when you've been doing it as long as me,
yeah.
So we go to Latin America, and we're at our first show in Costa Rica. We had a load-in day, thank God. And then the next day he went in with me early so he could do some programming. And he's going, "So how many people are you going to know here?" I said, "I've never been to Costa Rica. I don't know anybody." And I'm sitting in my office, and it's facing this big garage door. And through the garage door come walking two people. And all I can see is their silhouette because it's so bright. As they cross the threshold of my office, going, "Oh my God, Quake, how are you?" It was Frankie Perez and the monitor guy, this guy Glenn, and they were with Apocalyptica.
Huh.
Frankie was the singer and stuff, and he's like, "See, we're in Costa Rica, and you know somebody."
Uh,
We go to Buenos Aires, and all the promoters and stuff. "Oh, Quake, it's so good to see you again, wonderful." And we show up at the venue, and the stagehands are coming up. "Quake, welcome back." They actually learned English just to say that to me.
yeah.
And then we're flying to Rio de Janeiro to do a club show, and then we had a festival right after that. And at the club show, Winery Dogs were opening for us.
Okay.
And I'm standing,
Great band.
or actually, I'm not. We weren't in Buenos Aires; we were in Santiago. And I'm standing there at the gate in Santiago, waiting to get on the plane. I get a tap on the shoulder, and it's Billy Sheehan.
Oh,
"Oh my
jeez.
God, Quake! What do you have?" "Hey, actually, you're opening up for us tomorrow, so I'm with Stone Temple Pilots and stuff." That was the first time I had seen Billy since 2000. Yeah, 2000. My first show with Slash was the last time I physically saw him. We traded a couple of texts and a couple of
Why was
emails.
he at your first show with Slash? What?
Just fan.
Oh, he was just
Fan.
hanging out.
Yeah, and
Huh.
it's funny because I come out of the dressing room with my set list and my towel, my bottle of water, and the first person I run into is Mike Faley. Now, Mike was the guy who I had replaced with Talus as the sound guy. Mike wanted to go into management and stuff like that, and he I can't remember how, it's got to be almost 30 years. He's been the president of Metal Blade Records.
Oh,
And he's, "Oh my God, Quake, what are you doing here?" "Oh, front of house guy." He goes, "Oh, wait, I got to bring somebody over here to see you." Here comes Billy.
hilarious.
I'm like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "My first show was Slash." And Jim Mitchell, who was the studio engineer that worked with Slash quite a bit back in those days, was standing there as well. And just before I hit play on the intro, Slash leans over and goes, "You better do a good job, kid, or he's going to fire you." And okay, cool. We start the show. 3 songs into it, Jim's going nuts. He goes, "Oh my God, I'm in the whiskey and I can hear the singer over Slash. And I can hear the drum. It sounds like a band. How did you learn to mix over such a loud guitar player?" I said, "Working for Billy."
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
back
true.
in those days, he had
Yeah.
he had more power in his bass rig than
Well,
I
I
had
was going to
with you.
ask you, because he uses those like Pierce guitar preamps, and his bass just sounds ridiculous. It's so distorted. It doesn't even sound like a bass. It's hardly
Yeah.
got low end. And I'm not
Well,
putting him down. The guy's an incredible player, and he ends up with a good sound, but it's got to be tough to mix him.
it was back when I was working with him, he had, I got 3 signals from him. I got a direct signal. And he had two guitar cables coming out of his guitar.
Yeah.
One was just the direct signal, just a standard bass sound. The other
Okay.
one went into a couple of preamps. One side went into a harmonizer, which he would mess around with every once in a while, but most of the time just a little bit of delay to it. And then the other one was distorted. And I had 2
Yeah.
mics on those cabinets. And just, unique.
Yeah.
Would be the phrase I would use.
Yeah.
Because, there was one night where we'd all had a little bit more to drink than probably should have,
Yeah.
but that's how you learn not to drink that much. But I'm listening to Billy play, and he's playing the standard bass line to the song, and on top of it, with his left hand on his neck, he's playing "Living in America" from West Side Story. Dun, 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 dun. And I'm like,
Jesus.
I can't think like that. And he
Yeah,
can
it's
do
wacky.
that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's, as I tell folks, they're like, well, how did he get to be such a great bass player? That guy never left. I mean, he went everywhere with that guitar.
Yeah.
I've actually seen interviews with him where he's, playing his bass during the interview, just
Yeah.
hanging out with it. And, that's how you get to know that instrument that well.
He's
And
an extremely talented guy. Like when I was younger, he was one of my favorite musicians because I was a bass player as well. But then I kind of learned, like, I don't know if you call it etiquette or just to shut up and quit overplaying everything all the time. And I stopped trying to be a lead bass player,
right.
and just tried to carry the bottom end a little bit more. Like, and one example of his that I didn't like, and I'm not here to put down Billy Sheehan by any stretch, but with Winery Dogs, they did a cover of Fooled Around and Fell in Love.
Mhm. Yeah.
Which
Yep.
is incredible. Like, I happen to love his voice and, Richie Kotzen's voice
Yeah.
but, Sheehan just can't stop himself. So it's like, fooled around and fell in love and he's going, it's like, stop it.
Well, and it's funny when we were in 1980 when we were opening for Van Halen, the last song that they would play for the set, we got a whopping 30 minutes. They would play "Not Fade Away," and the guitar player would come up behind him, a guy named Dave Cosentino, and he'd reach in front and he'd start playing the bass. And
Yeah.
Billy would reach behind him and start playing guitar.
Yeah.
Finally got his moment to play guitar, but they would kneel down and start rolling around on the ground, and neither of them missed a lick. And it was incredible to watch.
crazy.
Just the
Yeah,
musicianship in that, especially in that original 3-piece band was
Yeah.
just amazing. And they
Yeah.
all sang like birds, which is
Yeah.
the same thing. Winery Dogs, reminds me a lot
Yeah.
of that band.
Yeah.
Just all really great voices.
Incredible band.
And,
Yeah.
and outstanding musicians.
Yeah,
So,
incredible. I love that band, Winery Dogs. It's one of the worst parts about what's his name, Portnoy, going back to Dream Theater is because Winery Dogs disappeared at that point. So
right.
I was a huge fan of Winery Dogs. So, sorry, what were you going to say?
Okay. No, go ahead.
Before we get into it, you have such an incredible story that we did go through in our first podcast, but it's the bad part of your story where you have this incredible luck with flying and traveling in buses and, weaponry and all
Right.
kinds of
Well,
stuff. So
yeah, what I tell, especially with younger group or any band that I start with, I say, "Here, let me just give you the speech and get it out of the way. I've been in the music business for 48 years. I've been touring for 45 years. In 45 years, I've been shot once, stabbed twice. I've survived 2 cardiac arrests. I walked away from 2 plane crashes, 3 bus crashes, 4 bus fires, fell out of a truss at 18 feet, OD'd once, and had guns pulled on me 4 other times. Now, ask me why I believe in God and why I can't sleep."
yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, especially sleep on a bus. I'd never sleep on a bus
Yeah.
again if I were you.
Yeah. Well, what's a good way of putting this? Anything that doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and you have to face your fears.
For 50 years, ETC has made a name for itself in the world of entertainment technology. You can find ETC products in buildings of every size across the entire globe. Broadway shows, rock concerts, sports stadiums, outdoor parks, TV studios, and convention centers, you name it. They have all trusted ETC to make their spaces beautiful and safe. Many of these spaces include rigging systems to keep them running smoothly and safely, Fortunately, ETC Rigging offers a range of hoists and controls to accommodate the unique needs of various production spaces and budgets. ETC's motorized hoists and hoist control systems raise theater technology, including stage curtains, lighting equipment, backdrops, projection screens, and more. And the recent addition of Prodigy Balance, a new counterweight rigging solution for loads up to 1,200 pounds, brings more options to venues looking for safe, user-friendly rigging. If you need backstage rigging that is easy to learn and safe for students and volunteers to use, Prodigy Balance could be the answer. ETC is known for its customer support and 24/7, 365 availability. But now, employees have even more of a personal stake in maintaining that reputation because ETC has become 100% employee-owned. Each person building the rigging systems, developing the control software, and answering support calls is actually an owner at ETC. Outstanding support, reliable products, innovative technologies. This is the foundation of excellence ETC has built over the past 50 years, and they plan to deliver more in the next 50. For the latest ETC products and installation news, visit etcconnect.com.
Yeah.
I will admit that after the second plane crash, which was in 1999 with the Goo Goo Dolls in Sigonella, Sicily, at a Navy air station, the next day was kind of hard
Yeah.
to get on a commercial
How do you
flight.
get in 2 plane crashes?
Just, I'm named after a disaster for a reason. Just dumb luck.
It's true. Huh?
I mean, as I tell younger people getting into the business, don't take my story as being what you're going to experience in yours.
Yeah.
Mine's unique. And
Yeah.
that's what makes all of us unique people, is our different types of experiences.
Yeah.
And, experience comes when you expect a different result,
Yeah.
shall we
Yeah.
say.
It's true.
But yeah, there's times where, and I will admit too that I've walked away from a couple of planes and said, no, I'm not flying. I just can't do it today. And there's been a couple of bus drivers I've had replaced just because I didn't feel safe. But those, you learn to live with it, and you learn to, it's one thing to sit and criticize somebody for what they do, and another thing to be able to do it better.
Yeah.
And, let's face it, bus drivers are now finally starting to make a decent wage. And they're being respected for the fact that, they have the lives of how many people sleeping behind them, and I've had all types of bus drivers. I had the guy that I was doing a band, young lady by the name of Stacy Q in the 80s. And we had a bus driver who said, you can put a cup of coffee on that couch and go to bed and it will still be there when you get up. And so the tour manager wedged a cup of coffee in between the seats, pretty full, one night, just to see if it would spill. And he got up and went, cushions aren't wet. He didn't spill the coffee. And he was slowed down in the middle of the night. Now, conversely, I did a tour with Jane's Addiction in 1990, where the bus driver, hi, my name's Frank. My nickname's the Midget Maker. Now, if you've ever traveled on your bus, the Midget Maker is the guy that slams the brakes on you, squish down to the end of your bunk.
Oh, Jesus.
He's making you a midget, and he wasn't lying. I mean, I got thrown out of my bunk a couple of times. He somehow popped the clutch, gassed the gun, and hit the brakes all at once one time. And I went flying forward, had to grab the little gazebo thing and threw my back out. And that was how I entered Canada on the Jane's Addiction tour.
Jesus.
But yeah, it's,
Well,
and then
does anyone say anything to the bus driver when that happens?
Oh yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Believe me, at that, and it's ironic because that trip where I throw my back out, tour manager comes in. All right, well, we'll get you through the border and everything, and we'll send you to a chiropractor as soon as we get into Montreal. And at the end of the night, I'm dragging the last piece of truss out of the building, and I look and I see the back of the bus open. Well, before we went into Canada, we stopped at a little mom and pop truck stop, as you do, to get rid of things that shouldn't go to Canada.
Yeah.
And he decides he's going to fuel up. And the other bus driver's like, I don't know if I'd do it at this place. This place doesn't look quite right. Well, he took fuel on, and he took on some water in his fuel, and his bus gelled. And so, okay, call the band up. Hey, you got to come over here with your bus, pick up everybody. I rode in the semi that night. We drove to Toronto. did the show in Toronto the next day. I realistically was the only person that actually slept because, crew people are laying on the floor of the band bus and everything. And, they only had 8 bunks, so they didn't really have a lot of room for anybody else. And, we did the show in Toronto. The next day was a Monday. Perry and the tour manager flew to Cleveland where our next show was. And we, everybody piled into the band bus. And we stopped in Buffalo. I said, we got to stop at this place. You're going to order chicken wings from it, and you're going to thank me when we leave. And it was a place called La Nova's. Everybody that comes to Buffalo, I tell them, you can get good wings anywhere. You don't bother going to Anchor Bar. It's just a tourist trap. And it's on like the 15th owner or something like that. Try this place and try the barbecued wings, and you'll thank me for it. Well, I put in an order for wings, ran up the street because my old roommate lived up the street to say hello, came back, grabbed my wings, got in the bus. There's stacks of boxes. Everybody ordered wings. Yeah. But we had another bus driver a couple of days later, which was nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's just crazy luck.
Exactly. And same thing with the plane crashes,
Yeah.
Bad weather, pulling into Sigonella, Sicily in 1999, and the other one was in 87. I was flying from LA to back home to Buffalo at the time, and we had to go into JFK, and I was on an American Airlines flight, and he missed the runway. He literally landed and with the nose down into the water. And when you see the pilot coming, going, go that way. And and there's water coming up that way. Okay, let's leave. Now, back in those days, you didn't have 10 carry-ons, you know. So it was, a lot easier just to pick up and run. But
yeah. Wow. That's nuts. That's completely nuts. So last time we had you on was pretty much exactly 5 years ago, and October of COVID year 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, what have you been up to? What's news since then? It's 5 years, and I know you've been busy.
Yeah. There's been quite a bit. So I'll start right during the pandemic there. About 3 weeks after we did our podcast here, it was literally the Friday after the election. My wife got up to use the restroom in the middle of the night, slipped in our bathroom, fell and fractured her skull. Immediately put into intensive care. She fractured her skull right behind her left ear, so she lost 90% of her hearing behind her in her left ear. The good news is she figured out she only has to work half as hard to ignore me. But she that caused a stroke up here, which is emotion, reason, things like that. And she's got some pretty heavy duty memory issues, still has some emotional issues. But I'm very proud of her. She's come a long way in 5 years.
Wow.
And during that period,
does she do like some sort of rehab or anything? Like,
she did some rehab for quite a while. There were some issues like picking up a fork and looking at it going, I don't know, what am I supposed to do with this? Things like that.
I do that every day or two, too.
Oh, yeah. But that's where the white hair comes in.
Exactly.
But they, and still she'll have gaps in her memory. I'll go on the road for a period of time and I'll get a call. Everything will be great for a couple of weeks. And all of a sudden one day I'll get a call in the morning. Where are you? I'm in such and such with this band. Oh, okay. And then a couple hours later, are you at work? Yeah, I'm at work with this band in this city. And, it just comes in little episodes like that. The good news is those episodes have gotten fewer and far between.
Yeah. It's got to make you feel terrible leaving, though, I'm guessing.
Yes and no. My wife's a very independent person.
Okay.
And which is part of the reason why we've been married for 35 years now.
Yeah.
We got married in 1990, right, literally when I started working for Jane's Addiction. I had to go, you see these dates right at the beginning of the tour here? I got a problem. I've been engaged for 18 months and she's Sicilian. If I don't show up at the wedding, probably not a good idea.
Might be a problem.
Yeah.
If she doesn't kill me, her dad will.
Yeah. Well, and her dad was Sicilian. Her mom was Irish. So my wife is Sicilian and Irish. So not only does she have the temper, but she knows where to hide the bodies.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
that's good.
But we've been together for 35 years and she stuck with me through all that. And a year later, she had one of her cousins, moved in with us. She lived in Connecticut and was going through a divorce. Ironically, they got married a week before we did. And
Wow.
she stayed with us for about 6 months so I could start working. I started just doing some stuff locally with a regional company called Northeastern here in Rochester, New York,
Yeah.
and then started doing Stone Temple pilot dates and such. And she moved out after 6 months. She had 2 daughters going to school in Western New York and decided it'd be a good idea to be here. And there's more
Yeah.
family here and everything else. And when she moved out, she goes, I don't understand why you're still here. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she goes, all she does is yell at you. And, and 1 minute she's fine. Next minute, I'm like, well, first off, unlike your husband, I took a vow to death do his part. Little did I
Yeah.
know that my wife looks at it as a goal. But
Yeah.
I'm in here for the long run, and that's for better or for
Yeah.
worse. And I know
Yeah.
that that's not her. That's the
Yeah.
injury talking.
Yeah.
And she's like, wow, you're a lot better person
Yeah.
than I expected.
That's incredible
Yeah.
patience
And
and
during, yeah.
care.
And about a year after that, my daughter said something to me that, just made me almost want to, made me cry. She said, Dad, when I knew who you were and I learned what kind of a man you were when Mom got hurt, the way you
Yeah.
stood by her
That's
and way
amazing.
you fought like hell, during the pandemic, I had taken some training in the insurance industry, and I had
Yeah.
gotten licensed to be a life accident health broker during that period of time.
Right.
Little did I know I'd have to use that experience
Oh, yeah.
against the
True. Huh?
hospital and against the insurance companies.
Wow. That
But,
is the most brutal part of
oh,
getting
yeah.
sick or having an injury or anything is
Oh, yeah.
just
But then,
realizing how shitty that whole business is, the
oh,
whole
yeah.
health care
And then,
business.
but in 21, I did go back to work doing Stone Temple pilots, and things went fairly well. We did a couple of one-offs, and I wound up catching COVID for the first time. We've been very careful. This is in, fast forward to 22. 22, I did a short run in the U.S. with Slash and Myles Kennedy with the Conspirators, your friends Todd
Yeah,
and
Kearns.
Brent.
Yeah.
And that went really well, considering it was post-COVID. Everybody had to wear masks, take your temperature every
Yeah.
day, COVID tests every other show.
Pain in the ass.
Well, yeah, but we got to do what we got to do to get
Yeah.
open
Yeah. It
and
kept
get
you working.
back to work.
Yeah.
And we came off of that. I started doing some one-offs with Stone Temple pilots. We did a couple of dates in Canada, had to go to Fort Collins, Colorado for this big rodeo thing. Stone Temple pilots playing at a rodeo. I just realized that's kind of weird. But the flying home from that, the lady across from me coughing up a storm. I'm like, I got my mask on. I'm trying to sneak water. And I know, guys, 2 days later, I got COVID. We've been so careful because of my wife.
Yeah.
Now I'm sick as a dog. I'm in bed. I can't do anything for 2 weeks. My wife gets sick. She's in bed for 2 days. And then she's fine. I'm like, how the heck? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, I come back to work and did 2 shows in one weekend with STP, and we had Daughtry opening for us. And both were at casinos. One was in Pocatello, the other one was in Spokane. And the Pocatello show, it was 105 out, and Spokane was 104. So really hot days, very long days for me. After Pocatello, we had to drive to Salt Lake and then catch a flight early morning into Spokane. I didn't sleep because I rode in the van up front talking to the driver. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, keep this guy awake. It's a
Yeah.
limo van driver. Who knows if he actually had rest. And took a little nap, took a shower, got on the plane. Got into the casino we played in Spokane, sent everybody to their rooms. And then I get a call from the tour manager for Daughtry. He goes, we got a little problem. Our buses are limping. I said, yeah, your truck's here already. I've already got my stuff, my air freight, or I had a hotshot cargo company driving
Yeah.
a van full of gear, and we had rental gear there. I said, I've already unloaded my stuff. I'm starting on yours right now. Don't worry about it. You're fine. And we go through the day. It's hot as heck. My crew shows up. Oh, everything's pretty much ready for us. Just, put the drum kit together and, plug your amps in, do your sound check. And Daughtry shows up and they're like, cool. Everything's labeled. All right, you're going to walk in and you're going to go on that. Here's your dressing rooms. And we start the show and everything's going fine. And during STP, I just put Chris Daughtry on stage to sing with STP. And I walked to the edge of the stairs. I looked at the promoter and said, get your ambulance drivers. And he's like, what? I said, and I come to in the dressing room. I passed out. And I'm like, I don't pass out. What the heck is this? And they're, well, that's the 4th EKG. His heart looks fine. I don't know what the heck is going on. I said, I feel like somebody ran me over with a truck. So they let me fly home the next day. I fly home, go to immediately call my doctor. That was a Sunday. Monday, I'm in the doctor's office, and he goes, "You're just not well enough to go back to work yet. You got to go home and not work for 2 more weeks." I'm like, "Oh, great." Well, STP was doing I think they called it the Show for the Earth. It was being put on over in Portugal in the Azores, and
Yeah.
it was something that oh gosh, Nuno Betancourt. It was his brainchild, and I had talked the promoter rep that they had doing the build and everything else had talked me into flying over early. I was going to stage manage both days for them. The first day was STP and uh, oh good gosh, what was their name? Black Eyed Peas, and the next day was Bush and um, oh gosh, bald rap guy. I can't remember his name.
Bald rap guy.
Yeah. Put Pitbull,
Oh,
and
okay.
I had to call up and go, yeah, I can't do it. Well, my crew from STP calls me and goes, you'll never guess who our stage manager is. I'm like, who? They went, Nuno. I'm like, well, there you go. He gets a little extra experience for it. But
Jeez.
yeah, when I finally got back to work, they did an MRI of me and everything. And they went, oh, you got a bunch of stuff going on in your liver and kidneys. We're going to keep an eye on you. I'm like, okay, that's cool.
RZI Lighting. Planning a show, festival, or event in New Orleans? You've got to check out RZI Lighting, your go-to crew for all things lighting, rigging, and special effects. Since 1999, RZI has been lighting up the Gulf Coast with top-tier equipment, expert service, and that friendly, personal touch that keeps productions running smoothly. Whether you need rentals, sales, or labor support, their dedicated team has you covered every step of the way. From automated fixtures and truss to staging and effects, even consumables like gel, gaff tape, and fluids, RZI's got it all under one roof. They even offer on-site repairs and stock both new and pre-owned gear. So you're never left in the dark. For 25 years, they've been the trusted name in event production across Louisiana and beyond. So if you want your next show to shine, visit rzilighting.com. That's rzilighting.com.
You know, uh, 23, did a bunch of STP stuff again. We did a tour down in Latin America. Went really well. I, just told about running into Billy Sheehan there,
Yeah.
and he um, come back from that, started some shows for the U.S. military. Had to take a break because one of the guys got sick, and went out and did a few more one-offs. Came back, and I caught COVID again. Now it's my second time with COVID, and I get a phone call while I'm laying in bed.
In
How fast?
2023 too,
In
because
23,
like
yeah.
now it's not cool anymore to have
Right.
COVID.
Yeah.
That's like such a 2020 thing.
Yeah. Well, I get a call and they're like, how fast can you get on a plane? I said, well, I got COVID, so it's going to be about a week. And they said, good, we don't need you until this date. I'm like, who are you calling me about? And they're like, Daughtry, we need you to come in and tour manage, production manage, and do front of house. I'm like, I thought they had a tour manager, production manager, and a separate front of house guy. And they said, well, management decided to consolidate that year. And the guy they had, it just wasn't working out. So they had been suggested to call me from a guy named Tater, a monitor guy that I know. He's their account rep for sound image. And he says, well, there's only one guy to call. That's Quake. He's an expert at digging out of problems. And, I have to say that first off, it was an interesting tour because it was an acoustic tour, but we had 6 shows that were electric, and what a good band, and and interesting to work with. Chris has got a very different songwriting style, and
Yeah.
and it's funny because he just put the heaviest record out of his career, and then he's doing an acoustic tour.
That is
Um,
wild. Yeah. Weird.
but I'd had some problems with the console and did 2 shows, got into Bethlehem, Pennsylvania for a day off, called a friend of mine up at Clare Brothers in Lidditz and said, somebody's got to come fix this desk. Back and forth, back and forth. There, 3:30 in the afternoon, or 3:00 in the afternoon, I call him. I said, what do you know? And he goes, well, I'm having a little problem because Clare Brothers had just bought Sound Image, and it was a Sound Image account. They're like, well, they're kind of having an odd. So he goes, 3:30, Troy, Claire, and Greg and their guy that does their training are all having a meeting.
Yeah.
And the guy that does their training used to be a bass player in Buffalo that I used to work for on occasion. And he walks in and goes, well, what's going on with Daughtry? Well, they're kind of hemming and on. He goes, look, it's for the guy that started me in the business. And the guy from Buffalo goes, wait a minute, you're from Buffalo. Who is it? He goes, Quake. And both Greg and this guy turned around and went, when the hell did Quake start mixing Daughtry? He went, 2 days ago, and it's our stuff, and it's not working. And Greg's like, I can't believe we can't hear him yelling from here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so they showed up, got my console fixed, and I made them bring a Pro Tool rig out. Well, the next day we played another casino. I made my crew load in the entire electric show. I Pro Tooled 3 songs so I could rehearse and not show up, because the first electric show they had was Rocklahoma Festival. And Pro Tooled, 3 songs for them, and and set the acoustic setup, and did a 1-song sound check, which was one of the nice things about that organization. Chris got very comfortable with me very quickly, and so sound checks got really short, because he realized he's good. I don't need to worry about him. As long as I'm comfortable, he's got this. I never forget the first show at the end, after tipping my console and going downstairs. The keyboard player, Elvio, who's from Rochester as well, comes walking up crying and hugs me. And he goes, I can't believe it. I could hear myself. I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, my vocals. I've never heard myself before.
Jeez.
Well, okay. And then the band comes out, and the 2 guitar players come up and go, your acoustic sound is amazing. I'm like, this is day 1. Will you give me a week? But so I Pro Tools the thing. That following Wednesday, it's our first rock shows that Saturday. Was the only day I had a chance to sit around with any of the tracks at all. So I spent a little time getting tones on everything, and then I get a text from Chris Daughtry saying, hey, I hear you're going to rehearse. I want to come and listen. I'm like, oh, great. I try not to have the musicians or band members listen to my mix until, give me a week, get comfortable and stuff. So I'm trying to think of the name. He and Lizzie Hale did a Journey cover, and that was the song I was going to work on. So I said, no, this is my starting point. I'm getting tones. I got to make a lot of adjustments, but let me get started. I got about halfway through the song and stopped, rewound. All right, go back, figure this out, change this, change that, play it again, make about a little bit further, stopped. I said, all right, I got to make these couple of changes, then I'm going to make a pass. I want your opinion when I'm done. And I make the pass. And I said, well, what did you think? And he goes, and this is your starting point. I took a step back. Yeah. And he goes, Quake, most of my engineers, and you're like the 4th or 5th guy, don't wind up here. I'm like, I stepped forward again, said, you and I are going to get along fine for the rest of it.
Wow. That's an endorsement.
Yeah, it was. And we go to the next show, or that electric show. It's Rocklahoma. It's hot outside, and I'm using an Avid S6L, and they're known for overheating. And I'm getting heat issues all day long. And comes to the last song, and it says, critical heat issue, console shutting down in 4:59, 58, 50. And there's a bead of sweat coming down my forehead. And
you're fanning it off.
Yeah, a minute left on that countdown. Song ends. Mute me now, and I shut down immediately. Called Blair Brothers, had them send another engine out. A week later, we were playing a show in San Diego that Sound Image was doing, so they replaced the engine. Now this one says, got a power issue. I told the tech sit at the desk, unplugged one side and said, is it still on? He goes, yeah. I plugged it back in, unplugged the other side. Still on? Yeah. I said, I unplugged both. He goes, now it's off. I said, all right. Goes to the machine, just a weird thing. And the tour went great. And one of the last shows we did was Aftershock. Going back to Aftershock again. It was ironic because I had done Aftershock on a Thursday with Stone Temple Pilots, and then I'm back there again on Sunday with Daughtry. I'm mixing the band this time. And the manager was there, and he used to be their front of house guy and tour manager back in the day. And I come out to the mix position, and Guns N' Roses was headlining the main stage, and Dave Natal's out there. And there's 6 other young people standing around. And I look at the guys from Brown Note. I'm like, who are these people? And he goes, they all want to know who the old man is that's mixing Daughtry. I said, oh, get ready for this. And we start the set, and after the first song, the manager turns around and goes, oh my God, Quake, it's huge. It's awesome. Like, great job and stuff. And I hear one of the young kids go, wow, the old man's not afraid of the PA. And I kind of look over my shoulder, and Natal's just laughing.
That's
and
hilarious.
we get 4 songs into it, and everything's going great. And then all of a sudden, pop, my Surface and my engine both shut off. Now I'm going through a
You're as
UPS.
bad with consoles as you are with airplanes.
Right. Well,
You and airplanes
I
and
look
consoles.
and I'm like, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
Because I'm on a UPS and everything else. And like, we haven't had any power
Are you
glitches or
normally an
anything.
Avid guy?
Yeah, I prefer Avid. Just
Yeah.
sound wise, they sound better to me than a Digico does. And, it was designed by Bob Scoville, who mixed on a Gamble. And being a staff engineer from Ultrasound, I was assigned to Gamble, and I had the same console, not the same brand, the same console for 14 years straight.
Wow.
I know that thing, better than anything else in my life. And, I very calmly took my keys, walked over to the house Avid, plugged it in, grabbed the first show I saw, which was Rocklahoma. None of my plugins loaded, so I'm starting with no tone on the PA or anything else, just starting with a mix. And we make it through the set, and the manager comes up, shakes my hand, and he says, "Thank you." He goes, "You're like the fifth person to mix this band, and including myself, if it had been anybody else, we never would have made it through the set. Thank you." I said, "I'm still going to go apologize to Chris because this never should happen."
So are you still working for Daughtry today? Like, do you still?
No, they, it was basically just, can you fill in and get us through this tour? They did ask me to stay with them in 24, but I had already, Slash was going back out. And, with my history with him, I'm going to stick with him.
Yeah,
and ironically, he wound up giving me a raise in 24, first time, since the Conspirators started. But
wait, do me a favor and try and keep your hands off your desk a little bit, because you're pounding the hell out of the desk, and it's like bang, bang, bang in my head with the microphone. No, it's all good.
But I get on the phone
guys. You sound guys always make the sound problems for me.
Yeah. Well, I get on the phone with Claire Brothers, talking with two guys from Lidditz, and I've got one of my guys from Sound Image on the phone. And I said, "Look, this is what happened." And he said, "Well, it's common knowledge that these Avids have an issue." I said, "No, hold on, before we go any further." I said, "I've got three really good friends. One's Bob Scoville. He's the guy that came up with that platform.
Yeah.
Now, because he did, Avid gave him both of his setups. So he travels with a redundant setup. But I said, I've got two other friends, Greg Price, who's mixing Metallica, and Derek Featherstone, who does Dead & Company, and John Mayer, and many others. And I said, they don't carry a redundant setup. What's the difference?" I said, "They're not Claire Brothers. You guys buy a company, you put the stuff into inventory, you don't check it out. You don't update it. And if this engine's got an issue, why is it going out the door and not being repaired?" I'm prepping a tour for Slash on December 7th in 23. I want you and this other kid that had come to repair my console before from Lidditz to come out to San Diego, sit down there with me with my two guys from Sound Image, and they were there, and they also brought a guy from Avid in, and we had a little discussion. I started working on some stuff. I had a couple of files that I could play back, and within the first 2 hours, I found like 8 issues. Now, they're all little things. And one of the guys from Sound Image, this guy, Matt, he's like their boffin, the guy you call, "Hey, my console won't turn on." He's like, "I don't know what it is about Quake, but he touches stuff and it just, he breaks it." And I said, "No, I don't break it. I find the problems. I want to find them now, because if I'm in Singapore, I don't want my console to die. Because I'm not going to get another one. And by the way, if my console dies in Singapore, I'm pulling up to the first loading dock I see. Could be a high school, could be, shopping mall. I'm going to drop your stuff off and I'll never use you guys again. So make sure my stuff works." Funny enough that we went through that whole tour and it worked flawlessly. We did carry one backup engine. The monitor guy was using the same setup, and he had to use it one day. Had a weird power issue in Malaysia. And but other than that, it worked fine. And that I carried the same setup through the summer with Slash's Blues Ball. But just before we leave on that tour in 24, 23 in December, my wife and I went and got the COVID shot, and we got a flu vaccination. Because in 24, a lot of Latin American countries were still requiring an up-to-date COVID shot. And my doctor said, I'd had COVID 3 times at that point. I had had 3 shots, but they had all been Johnson & Johnson. So this time he wants me to get the new COVID shot. So I get the new COVID shot, and back in 2015, they'd noticed I was losing about a gram a day of protein in my urine. Pretty common if you're a diabetic, but I didn't get diagnosed as a diabetic until 22. They just chalked it off the fact that, I was just shy of 300 pounds and a sober drug addict.
Yeah.
You don't worry about it. Well, October 23, 1 gram a day still. And January, I'm at 6 grams. The doctor says, you have a thing called nephrotic syndrome. Watch your salt and sleep with your feet up if you start swelling. And when you get home, we're going to do some more tests. So I get out on the road and it's going okay. We get into the UK and we had a day off in Manchester, and I go out to eat lunch, come back. I fell asleep at the desk in my hotel room and woke up. Oh my gosh, it's 5 o'clock. I got to do my day sheets. And I go to stand up and my feet, my legs, my abdomen, my hands, my eyes were all swollen. Like, what on earth? There was a movie that it was out. It was a horror movie when I was a kid. The kid woke up and his hands, the line from Pink Floyd, and my hands were like two big balloons. And that's all I could think of was that. And it was about that movie. And I'm like, what the heck is this? So the next day, try to get a doctor. No luck. Next day, we go into Dublin and Scotland. And my assistant, couldn't get a doctor there. My assistant comes walking in just after I had opened doors, clutching his belly, collapses in the runner's car off to the hospital. He goes. I show up at the hospital at 2:30 or 12:30 in the morning after we loaded out, and he still hadn't seen a doctor yet, but he finally gets looked at, and he had an issue with his prostate had swollen and it backed up poison into his one kidney. He didn't know he had one kidney. And so he had a kidney issue. Wait a minute, I got a kidney issue. He's got a kidney issue.
That's
now,
crazy too.
we go through that tour. I had a young lady join us over to take his place over in Germany, and she managed to get a doctor to see me in Berlin. The doctor said, well, you have all this wrong with you. You've got high blood pressure and it's, cholesterol, and you're taking a lot of medication. I don't want to add to that. Sleep with your feet up, drink a lot of fluid, and as soon as you get home, go immediately to a doctor. So made it through that tour, got home, call up my doctor. He was off, but they sent me into a nurse practitioner, and he's on the phone with him at his kid's something tournament that he was at. And he's like going, order this test, this test, this test, this test. He's got nephrotic syndrome. I'm afraid there's something else that's happened. So they copy all this to the nephrology department. Nephrology, by the way, is your kidneys at the University of Rochester. And, I go in for an ultrasound of my legs to make sure I don't have clots or anything. And I get a blood work done, and they come back, and I'm now at 7.5 grams of protein loss. And I get a call from the nephrology department. Hi, I'm Dr. Lay. You're coming in to see me. And I went in to see her. She goes, we're ordering an emergency biopsy of your kidney. I'm like, okay. So I went in on a Monday for a biopsy. Wednesday, had a root canal done. Friday, had to go in for another MRI for my kidneys and liver, and I passed out during the MRI. Second time I passed out in my life. And so they have to keep you in the hospital for a while. It was the same network of hospitals that University of Rochester, only this was Highland. It's about a mile away from the U of R's main place called Strong. And my doctor drives over with 4 students to sit down with me. My wife was sitting in the room, and she says, so we've got the preliminary back from your biopsy. You have what is called FSGS, focal segmented glomerulosclerosis. Basically, glomerular looks like a plume on a marching helmet from a marching band. And she goes, that's the part that grabs the protein, puts it back into your bloodstream, go make bone, make, hair, et cetera, et cetera. She goes, you should have had 25 in the biopsy. You had 2.
Jeez.
What has happened, something has killed that part of your kidney. There is no cure, and you're not going to recover from this. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Doc.
Yeah. Now, meanwhile, my wife's
here's your bill.
Yeah, my wife's going, wait a minute. And then the doctor's like, Mr. Mark, you're very calm. Well, ma'am, there's no polite way of putting it, but I don't cry over spilled milk. I can't change what's got me here. All I can do is play the cards I'm dealt. And we're going to formulate a plan. I'm going to follow that plan. And by the way, I've got 7 days before I leave on my next tour. So we got to get this plan rolling. And, and to the students and to the doctor, I said, please excuse the vernacular, but I'm the kind of person who's going to look a problem square in the eye and say, fuck you, I'm going to win.
Yeah.
So they put me on some high doses of steroids, and I left. And, here's a ton of dietary restrictions. I was limited to 1,400 milligrams of sodium a day. To put that in perspective, the RDA says that you should have 2,800 milligrams. The average American consumes somewhere in the neighborhood of 7,000 to 8,000 milligrams of sodium a day.
Wow.
You don't realize how much sodium is in a glass of milk, a slice of bread. It's incredible, and it all adds up. So I had to be very careful, and things went great. I dropped. I was 250 pounds when I went in to have my MRI done. Within a month or so, I was down to 200 pounds. Actually, we were at a casino in California.
50 pounds in a month?
Yeah, in a month. Not the right way, by the way.
No.
And I treated myself to a steak that night, and things were going very well until we had a show in Nebraska, and at the end of the show, we found out that Slash's lost one of the members of his family. So we had to take a break. And during that break, I had to reschedule the tour, move, go in the truck 3 times, get his wet clothes out, oh my God, we're starting in Canada. Well, we can't take the merch. Got to go get that out of the truck. And my stress level went from its normal ridiculous level to you can't even see it anymore.
Yeah.
And then we went into a whole series of dates, played Lewiston, New York, at a place called Art Park. The production company showed up 4 hours and 45 minutes late. He had 15 more minutes before I was going to call the show. We went into a show in New York City where a storm hit just before. We were playing Pier 17. Storm hit just before. Had to, not load the audience in, load the audience in, talk to every band. You're cutting 10 minutes, you're cutting 10 minutes, we're cutting a half hour.
What's your role at this point? You're production
manager and front of house guy for Slash. And we were on what was called the Serpent Tour. It was a blues tour. And I had 9 different opening acts throughout the whole tour.
Right.
The bills were incredible. I mean, the first one was, Eric Gale, Samantha Fish, Warren, and then Slash, and just talk about guitar players for days. Holy cow! And then Eric left, and we got Kev Mo, and then Samantha left, and I forget the young lady that we replaced her, but just a revolving door, and stuff. But here again, after that, all of a sudden I'm starting to swell up again, and the lighting guy I was with had some family that worked with the Music Health Alliance, and they set up for a doctor to talk to me when I was in Nashville. And 2 folks came out. I allowed them to look at all my records and stuff, and they said, "Wow, you're obviously swollen again. It doesn't look like the water pill they're giving you is working. You're going to need to change that." And one was an older doctor, and he said, "Look, I'm retiring in the fall." And he goes, "I'm going to give you a bunch of tests to get." He goes, this could be genetic. This could be caused by something you've caught, or I'll get to the last one last. So he gave me all these tests to go to see an immunologist about infectious diseases. There's like 7 or 8 diseases I have to be tested for. He also said, get tested for lupus, get tested for, arthritis, all the autoimmune diseases. And he said, and you got to get a genetic test. Well, to get a genetic test for something like this takes a little over 2 years. Now it's been a year.
Why?
Just what it is. Now, ironically, I'm in a test group for a different reason, and they looked for one specific gene. That happened in 15 minutes. Why can't you just extrapolate that and kind of let's take a look at the whole thing? But he goes, if we can come up with what the underlying cause is, and this is the same thing my team at U of R said, you can get a kidney transplant or a graft. But if not, whatever's killing that part of your kidney is just going to keep doing it. So it's just going to be a vicious cycle. And why put you through all that surgery? I said, okay, cool. So we finished that tour, and I get home and I'm in bad shape. And in September, 3 days before our anniversary, I was hospitalized. On our anniversary.
What year is that?
This was last year, September 24.
Wow.
And at this point, I'm at 12 grams of protein loss a day. They said the other side of your kidney function has dropped drastically. Before that, they were like going, you could be like a test case because that part of your kidneys work great. Well, at this point, they're now saying if we don't get this under control in 3 to 4 days, we're talking dialysis. And I'm like, the last thing I want is a hole in my neck. And I still had stuff booked for the rest of the year. I had a bunch of dates with Stone Temple Pilots, and I had an event over in London for the Sky Arts Music Awards where Slash was going to play, and Brian Johnson they were going to do Killing Floor with his blues band over there. Brian sang that song on the album, and the people putting the show on, the recording people said, "Hey, Quake's going to be there. Just have him mix the music." So I had a little side deal cut to do all that as well. And our anniversary comes around, and my wife says, well, I'm going to get out of here, go get some stuff done. And I'm like, yeah, thanks. There's nothing you can do except sit there and stare at somebody. And that kind of gets a little nerve-wracking when this isn't going to change how I am. They came in right after that, and I never told my wife this until June when she read it on a piece of paper because I didn't want anybody else to find out. They said, Mr. Mark, you're stage 4. You've got 24 to 36 months to live. I'm like, no. Yeah, no. I got to get new doctors. All I keep doing is giving me bad news. But a little bit later, I got a text from the young lady over in Germany, and she goes, hey, happy anniversary. And by the way, get ready. I'm like, get ready? What are you talking about? Well, over the course of the next 3 hours, I got over 100 texts, emails, WhatsApp messages, WhatsApp videos, from over 100 different people in the music industry from around the world, all saying what an important person I was to their careers, what I meant to them, what working with them, what they'd learned from me, and that they support me 100%, keep strong, you're going to beat this. Now, that was easily the most humbling thing I've ever had happen in my life. Yeah. And it ended with a 2-hour phone call with Slash, where I admitted to him what was going on. He was one of the only people that knew. We're that close of friends that, I knew I could trust him not to go blabbing it out to anybody else. But I left the hospital a week later. I'm happy to say I walked out. I was very weak. I had started losing weight again. They had started me on a different medication, and I kept fighting. I went back doing a couple of things in November. They're the local sound company I work for here in Rochester. They do an event in Buffalo called the World's Largest Disco. It is the dumbest lighting event you've ever seen in your life. It takes over the entire Buffalo Convention Center, and it takes just shy 2 weeks to set it up, and it happens right around Thanksgiving. Well, I'm so weak, and I've dropped down. At that point, I was 180 pounds, and a friend of mine came to visit me, and he took a picture with me, and I saw him a few weeks ago, and he goes, Quake, when we took that picture, I was convinced I was never going to see you again. Yeah. I said, I was kind of leaning that way too, because I felt terrible. I had to sit down quite often. I'd realized that I don't have the strength anymore. I did a few weeks at a place called Del Lago, a casino, filling in for a friend of mine as the audio guy. Ironically, that first weekend, Daughtry comes in. And the guy that had taken my place as tour manager and production manager, they went from a guy named Quake to a guy named Sheep. At least they kept up with people with good nicknames.
Yeah.
They had a new monitor guy who was a friend of mine, front of house guy I'd never met before and stuff. And they're loading out, and Sheep is trying to bring the wardrobe cases down. They were the last things to go into their truck, and he's trying to bring them down from the 3rd floor, and the elevator breaks. And it took them a good 45 minutes to get him out of that elevator. And at one point, the rest of the crew went, well, Quake's here. We'll just have him pack a bag. We got to pass by his house. And I'm like, shut up.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
But finished that. January, saw my doctor again. I was at 6 grams of protein loss. She's like, okay, whatever you're doing, keep it up.
So that's an improvement.
Down to 170 pounds. And April, I was her last patient. She moved to UC Irvine, is now the head of medicine at UC Irvine. And at this point, too, I should also qualify this, that I'm now a case study at the University of Rochester, UC Irvine, and Vanderbilt. They're all three
Jesus.
places are kind of following. By the way, you never want to have somebody go, by the way, you're a case study.
Yeah.
But still, I'm not feeling too bad. And she's going, you're at 4.5 grams. You're keep going. Keep liking this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's awesome. So she, sorry, we just had a picture fall
No
off.
problem.
Ironically, it's the same picture of my parents. It's fallen off the wall 3 times. But the,
It's got to be a sign.
yeah, Mom, Dad, what did I do?
Yeah.
But the, I was then moved to the nephrotic team, the nephrology team I saw in the hospital. And the one young lady is an expert at what I have. And in April, my doctor had talked to me, and then I got an email from the other doctor. There's a new medication that was coming out. They had applied for me to be on the test program. It was specifically designed for people with that disease, and they had to get approval from them and approval from my insurance. Well, in July, I go in to see my new nephrology team. She's like, you're at 2 grams of protein loss. You no longer have nephrotic syndrome. You still have FSGS, but you're stage 2. And I said, so with that, has my prognosis changed? Well, Tim, you could, wake up tomorrow morning. I said, stop with you could fall into the middle of the road and get hit by a car, or you could fall out of your bed. You know what I'm talking about. She goes, with the attitude you have and the progress you've made, I can see you being in your mid-70s. I'm 64 right now. I'll take that. That's a heck of a lot better than 2 years.
Congratulations. That's incredible.
But I was down to 150 pounds. And to lose 100 pounds in that fast a time, I don't recommend it. Everybody's like, you look great, but except for my nephrologist who went, you look terrible. I'm like, why?
But I'm guessing your knees and stuff felt better, and hips and all of those things that hurt when you're a little heavier. Yeah, absolutely. My back, especially, because that's one of the things you learn is, how much you're sticking out in the front affects your back. But she says, keep it up. And, I'll be very frank that it took a while for me to learn, and a lot of soul searching, that in this case, winning isn't being cured of this. Winning is learning how to live with it. Yeah.
Now, this whole time, I'm still working. I went off, I did a bunch of stuff for local college, went back with that sound company, did the Cornell graduation.
Did you do the thing in London?
No, I wound up not. I had another friend of mine filled in for.
Yeah.
Very fortunately, Slash still paid me as though I went.
Oh, wow.
That was very kind of. Yeah, that is, and I've been working the whole time, and I went to see the same doctor 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, sorry. And she said, well, you were at 2 grams in July. You're at 1.7 grams. You're doing great. You've put 20 pounds back on. I'm 170 now. She goes, you look better. Your face looks fuller. I said, I feel good. Really good, better than I have in a long time. And she goes, yeah, that's great. And, keep it up. By the way, that drug, we finally got approved by your insurance company. But in the meantime, the FDA has cleared it. So in January 10th, you're going to start taking this new medication that will replace one of your blood pressure meds and is specifically targeted for FSGS. So you'll be one of the first people in the world to get it. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. I had told them when I first got diagnosed with this and I was in the hospital, I said, look, if there's anything weird you want to try, February, they had me do 2 rounds of chemo, just the thing called rituximab. It's very mild chemo. And I said, but if there's stuff like that you want to try, it may not save me, but I can give you data. And they're like, that's so cool. But yeah, it's, I feel good.
Good.
I pulled another tour that I'm not allowed to talk about until mid-November because they haven't told the other guys that I'm replacing.
Bummer.
But it's, it'll be nice. I'll be very busy next year. And I've been working for that regional sound company again, prepping his world's largest disco for this year. So
that's wild.
Yeah. Which it's funny because, you know me as a sound guy. And ironically, I'm working for this guy and I'm repairing Lecos and Fresnels and,
that's interesting.
Putting bulbs into power cans and such. And, that takes me back to, I was telling one of the guys I work with, I said, the last time I pulled a Leco apart, he goes, no. I said, I was 18 years old. I was in high school because I ran the stage at my school.
That's wild.
I said, so it's kind of weird that the whole thing's coming full circle how many years later.
But you're also doing stuff with Video West as well, right? Like
correct.
As biz dev?
And Don Ladico, our common friend,
Love
Donnie,
Don.
by the way, was the guy that pulled me into the Red Alert campaign.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
remember that. Yeah.
being one of the few sound guys there with a bunch of lighting people. And he
Yeah.
also he made the comment to Brad. He goes, "By the way, this guy can talk. Just let him go." You know. So I wound up doing, oh my God,
I've
probably
never noticed
7
that about you, you know?
yeah. So I
Yeah.
did all these podcasts and stuff, and other,
Yeah.
appearances on TV stations and radio stations and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, Don had been talking to me for a couple of years about trying to help him out, get Video West stepping up in the touring game, because they
Yeah.
do some touring. They just finished George Strait's stadium tour, doing
Yeah.
lighting and
Yeah.
video for that.
Yeah.
And they if you've ever done Buffalo Chip at Sturgis, they're the company that does that festival. Which is always, I've always had good experiences with him there. And I said, he knew I needed some extra work, and said, we're not booking stuff. All we need you to do is introduce us around, open doors, shake hands, got a stack of business cards, and yeah, so I started with them in August, and it's been an interesting experience. I got to fly out to Video West in September and check out their operation in Phoenix, and
Yeah.
was extremely impressed with the organization, how they've got their warehouses set up. Looking through just in their audio portion, how their stuff is packaged and stuff. And Video West, as you may or may not know, in May was acquired by On
Yeah. On
Services.
services.
So now
Right.
they're
Yep.
part of this big conglomeration. As of January, we'll be rebranding as On Services.
Oh, I didn't
Which
know
now,
that part.
yeah.
Ah.
Right now, we're Video West powered by On Services, but we will be
Yeah.
rebranded as On Services,
Yeah.
which gives us an access to a whole lot more equipment, especially in
Well,
the
the other
audio
thing is,
end of
I
things.
think it's always been confusing, and Donnie and I have had that talk so many times, because Video West, people think of you as a video company,
Yeah.
yet they're a great lighting company and a pretty good audio company. So, I think held them back in a sense. Not that Video West was a bad name, but when you're trying to brand a lighting company or
Yeah.
build a lighting company, it does hold you back a little bit. And we've always talked about that.
Yeah, and
And
that's kind of, quite frankly, that's kind of what I'm running into, is people are like, well, wait a minute, aren't they a video
Yeah.
company, or don't they just do corporate stuff? I'm like, no,
Yeah.
they do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And the owners from On Services are very interested in stepping up the touring game,
Yeah.
because and it's funny because after I flew out in September to go out to hang out with Donnie, meet everybody in the office, the only person that wasn't there was Jack, the owner. And about 2 weeks later, he sends me an email. He goes, "Hey, I've got a place up in Fort Erie. That's my summer home. And I'm coming to Rochester to play a golf tournament. I'd like to sit down for breakfast with you, get a chance to meet you, talk to you." And he says, and ironically,
Or
the
listen
next,
to you.
as
Yeah.
cases. And he
Yeah.
said, and the following day, the owner from On Services is flying in, and I would like him to meet you as well. And so I sat down for breakfast with him, and we had a great conversation and stuff. I like their philosophy.
Yeah.
They don't want to be PRG. They don't want to be Clare Brothers. They
Right.
don't want to be Solo Tech. They want their own niche. They want to
Yeah.
do 10 tours a year,
Yeah.
but doing better than anybody else, which
Yeah.
come from ultrasound. That was Dr. Don Pearson, and to this day, still Derek Featherstone's whole philosophy. We don't want to take over the world. We just want our corner, and we want to do it better than anybody else. Don Pearson
Yeah.
once said to me, he goes, settle on your price and just do it better than anybody else. Okay, fair enough.
Quality, not quantity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, so all that's good. And then the next day I met with Brent, the owner of On Services, and we're talking. And I said, well, let me kind of back up. Why do companies want to tour? And he goes, well, that's a great question. I said, well, you got this corporate show. You got all the gear slotted for 2 months from now, and you're going to make X amount of dollars off of that. Now, yes, when you go out on tour, you're not going to make that big lump. It's going to be a smaller lump, but you're going to get it for 7 weeks,
Yeah.
8 weeks, 10 weeks. And all you got to do is make sure it works.
Yeah.
And make sure that there's somebody on the other end of the phone, and make sure
Yeah.
that the people that are out there with the gear are well trained. And he's
Yeah.
like, oh, I said, yeah, you buy all this equipment, make it work for you.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
which, one of the main things I stressed with them is training. We got to do some training stuff. And it's got to be company wide. I know Video West is holding a seminar in November. Unfortunately, I can't go because I'm doing that disco thing, but Video West has a really good complement of L Acoustics gear. So they're bringing in some folks from Acoustics, and they're doing a 3-day training on that equipment. I said, now the next step is we got to buy some smart rigs, measurement systems. And you've got a large complement of Meyer. So next training I want to do 2 days with smart and then do 3 days with the Meyer people. And so that, if you've got all your techs, whether they use Meyer or whether they use Acoustics, they know the whole.
And today's podcast is brought to you by Artistry in Motion. When it's time to make a moment unforgettable, Artistry in Motion delivers. Since 1994, they've been the go-to source for top-tier confetti and streamer special effects, turning ordinary events into explosive, show-stopping experiences. From concerts and TV productions to major sporting events and theme parks, they bring the wow factor with precision and creativity. So whether you need a massive stadium drop or a subtle, picture-perfect cascade, they make it happen on time, every time. Their team doesn't just supply confetti, they collaborate with show designers, event planners, and production teams to ensure every effect is camera-ready and crowd-approved. Want to take your next event to the next level? Hit them up, artistryinmotion.com, and let's make memories happen.
Thing. And
when you're speccing the system, like you like Avid consoles, what's your line array of choice?
I prefer Meyer, Panther.
Yeah.
Coming from ultrasound, and I'll be very frank, when I started with ultrasound, I did not like Meyer stuff. It was the days of the MSL3s, and they just too brittle sounding, and it wasn't beefy. And the first show I ever used ultrasound for, I plugged, they brought in a rig for Toad the Wet Sprocket, and, not the biggest rock band in the world, as far as rock goes. And they brought a Gamble in for me to use, and I'm like, oh, I love the Gamble. And I turned the system on to tune, and I went, hey, wait a minute, this isn't, they said, don't ask, but this is, don't ask, but it's rock.
Yeah.
And they're like, right. Well, I start to work with them. I find out that first off, none of their amps had on-off switches. You plugged them in, turned them on, and then there was an X on top of each amp rack, and the tech would jump on the amp rack and stomp on them, and it would kickstart all the relays to turn the amps on.
God.
Because the one thing that failed in a Crest amp was the relay with the switch. So they got rid of that. He also had, Don Pearson built these line drivers to drive the PA more because most people weren't driving it hard enough. And he cut the tweeters out of it so it didn't sound like a bright, brittle thing. And then, moved into MSL4s and MSL10s, got to do stadium tours for Dave Matthews as a systems engineer and front of house tech on that. And that's, I really started to like it. And then when Myers
I'm sure
came out,
Metallica changed Meyer a bit too, I would guess.
Yeah. And it's funny because a few years back I was doing Boston Calling for the company Rainbow out of the Northeast, New England Audio Tech. And Scott Tkachuk, who now works for Ultrasound, by the way. I'm on the third stage. I was, hey, what are you doing next week? Can you fill in out here? Sure, no problem. Well, Ralph Mastrangelo was there, and Ralph had just left VER, and he was there visiting Greg Price's mixing tool, and he was there to visit Greg and talk to him and stuff. And he finds out I'm there, so he comes over and he's talking to me, and what do you think of this company? Well, I said, it's a good company. I said, the owner's a little weird, but what owner of a production company isn't, especially
you got to be weird to get into it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What makes you think that let's do 20-hour days, 8 days a week.
Yeah. Sounds fun.
Yeah, exactly. But he goes, yeah, I'm kind of looking, I got a client, they need somebody to service their Meyer, and I kind of look at them and I'm like, you're an idiot. He's like, what? I said, you're an idiot. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, the client you're talking about is based out of San Francisco. Where did you meet me? And he went, I'm an idiot. He called Derek Featherstone from Ultrasound. Ultrasound started teching the Metallica thing. And right at that time, Yamaha bought out Pro Media, which was Pro Media Ultrasound at the time.
Right.
And they didn't want to keep the live part. So Derek had gone to the owners and said, you got to give me a year to come up with the money. Well, between he and Ralph and a couple of management companies, they came up with the money and they bought Ultrasound. And it went from when Derek first initially bought the place, there was 10 employees. Now they're over 70. And their client list has expanded drastically. Great news for them.
And they're like the one company that hasn't sold to Claire yet.
Correct. Them, Solotech and PRG,
Yeah.
But it's but yeah, it's been, good to watch the growth of them. And funny enough, in 2012, when I took Slash's tour with the Conspirators, Derek had called me up and goes, "Well, you give the tour to Maryland Sound, you won't even let me bid on it." And I sent him the quote, and he goes, "Well, I can." "Oh no, I can't." It was a ridiculously low bid, and I found out from Bob Goldstein. He said, "Well, we had this guy Pooch start for us 3 days before you had your conversation with him, and he's our head of touring sales." And he said, "Look, put the stuff out with Quake and Toby Francis, and it'll be at every festival in the world, and you'll get tours off us." And Maryland Sound got 7 tours from
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
and we didn't talk for a very long time. And then a few years back, I used to have a tech over there by the name of Chris Sharuki, and he called me just before the last Goo Goo Dolls tour I did, and he said, "Quakester, I got some bad news." Now, Chris had been with me at this point for 10 years, and I said, "What's the bad news?" He goes, "I can't do the tour." I said, "What's up?" And he goes, "Well, I got one of those offers you can't say no to." I said, "What's going on?" He goes, "Bob Weir, Rat Dog, production manager and monitor guy. Congratulations." And he's
Wow.
like, "It's not what I expected." I said, "Am I bummed?" "Yes, but guys like me
Hey,
want to see guys like you do good."
of course.
You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that proves that I was right. And he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, wow, Quakester. Never thought of that."
That's cool.
And now a couple of years go by, and I get a text from Tommy Lyon. Tommy is currently the front of house guy for Dave Matthews. I got Tommy his gig at Ultrasound. That's another story. Bob Hogan.
Well, that's quite a phone ring.
Yeah. But yeah, he says, "Oh my God, Chris." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And then Derek Featherstone calls me, and he says, "Chris Sharuki died." I'm like, "What?"
Oh,
Now, he
no.
was supposed to be he had been out with the Dead and stuff like that, and was supposed to be putting something together at the Fillmore in San Francisco with Bob Weir and Rat Dog, and they hadn't heard from him for a few days. So AJ, Bob's tech, breaks into Chris's apartment and finds him, and he'd been gone for a couple of days. Now, I'm on the phone with Derek, and my phone rings, and I look, and I went, I got a 415 that's identifying itself as the San Francisco Police Department. "Derek, hold the line. I'll be right back." Click over. Now, when Chris started working for me, when most people start working for me, I make you fill out a form that says emergency contacts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Quakester, I don't have any family. I said, "Put me down as your emergency contact." Well, San Francisco Police Department says, "Mr. Mark, we regret to inform you, Chris Sharuki has passed away." I said, "How did you get my number?" And he said in his wallet was a piece of paper that said, "In case of an emergency, please call Tim Quake Mark." And he had 3 of my phone numbers crossed out, my current cell phone number listed. So
Oh, my
he
goodness.
maintained it that whole time.
That is
Now,
crazy.
a couple of years ago, the local company I'm working for here, the owner calls me up on a Friday. He goes, "I hate doing this, but I gotta send you down to Cornell for a couple of days." I'm like, we were doing a thing called Slope Day for him. And he goes, "Well, Grateful Dead's coming in to redo their biggest recording they've ever done. We're doing stage, barricades, ADA ramps, running the labor through us, loading dock, all that stuff." Now, we wound up not doing the stage, but he says, I got to leave somebody there as the company rep, and I hate doing it because I know you'll just talk everybody's ear off, but you got to go. I'm like, "Okay." So I show up on the Sunday. Band was flying in from doing Jazz Fest in New Orleans, so trucks were running a little late. And I have the owner of the company introduced me to the promoter, and the rigger guy is standing there. And I've known this guy for decades, and his name's Sam, Rigger Sam, and he looks like Yosemite Sam, only with white hair. And I said, "Well, I'm just going to apologize now." And the promoter guy's like, "Why?" And I said, "I was a 22-year employee of Ultrasound." Well, both Sam and I caught the eye roll. And he's like, "Oh, great. Okay, whatever, dude." Go back out. First guy to show up is the production manager and stage manager, a guy named Chris Scott. And I walk up behind Chris, and he's pointing around and stuff. And so I come up behind him. I do the same thing. And he turns around. "What? Oh, my God, Quake." Gives me a big hug. And he's talking to the promoter. He goes, "This was my first tour manager. And, this is that. And I'm like, "Oh, great. Here we go." And then next thing is the sound crew that comes in. And they all lined up, and it was just like I was at a wedding. "Oh, my God, Quake. Oh, God, Quake. It's so good to you. Oh, my God, Quake. Oh, God, Quake." Go through all them. Then the backline crew shows up, and AJ realizes Bob's tech realizes who I am, comes over, and we hugged it out for a good 10 minutes with him crying. And then next, the band comes in. They're heading to their dressing room. I'd missed Derek as he walked in, but the drummer walks in. Drummer used to play in Primus, who I used to work with, and he walks past, stops, turns around, he goes, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm your labor," et cetera, et cetera. "Oh my God, Quake! Oh my God!"
That's wild.
So I'm setting up an ADA ramp in the back of the house, and Derek comes in. He's down stage left talking to the promoter, and he's facing into the arena. And all of a sudden he sees me, and the promoter tells me this later. He said, he saw you and he started shaking. And he said, "I'm sorry, but nothing we can talk about is going to be any more important than this." And he realized Derek's crying. Now, I hadn't seen Derek face to face for 12 years at that point, something like that. So he comes over, "Oh my God, Quake," and, nice big hug. And we talked for a bit, feel free to sit down behind me. I said, "My boss doesn't want me anywhere near you during the show. So thank you. I appreciate the offer, but I will watch while Mateus tunes the PA though." And end of the night, they all lined up, stopped to say goodbye. Derek leaves with the band, so he came back, sought me out, goodbye, walk us out to the bus. Okay, cool. They all take off. Sound crew, big hugs. Same thing with the stage manager. And at 3:00 in the morning, here comes the promoter guy, and he goes, "Well, first off, you obviously have this under control. You don't need my help. I have to shake your hand and apologize." I'm like, "Excuse me?" And he goes, "When you told me you were a 22-year-old employee, I did not believe you that you worked for ultrasound." And he goes, "Obviously you are. And I now understand why Sam said you have a God complex." "Excuse me?" And he goes,
my
"Every single
goodness.
person that walked up to you said, 'Oh my God, Quake.'"
That's hilarious.
Okay, yeah, I have to wear that one. So
Yeah. You remind me of like an audio version of Cosmo, because the guy, he knows, first of all, he knows everyone. He has a billion friends in every country. Everybody knows Cosmo, and everyone gives him big hugs. He's a good hugger.
yes,
But also he had the same gig that you have with Donnie for Gateway.
yeah,
Where he was just basically saying, "Hey, these are nice people. These are nice people. Let me introduce you." And
yeah.
so he wasn't
Let's
like a
see.
sales guy. He was
Right,
just
right.
somebody that was a goodwill ambassador, basically.
Right. And
Yeah.
ironically, right after he started with Gateway, we brought him out in 22 as the LD for Slash. So I
Yeah.
got to tour with him, which was
Right.
kind of nice because during that period of time, we were both born in 1961 and we were
Yeah.
both turning 61.
Yeah.
2 weeks,
Wow.
like 3 weeks apart and
Yeah.
stuff. And we were in LA doing rehearsal. We'd finished rehearsals and loaded the truck. We went out to Casa Vega for dinner. And he's like, "I got a special surprise for you, Quake, for your birthday." I'm like, "What the heck is going on?" He goes, and then he gets a call and he goes, "Excuse me." Well, he comes walking in with Billy Mummy
I don't
from
know
the
who that is.
Munsters.
Oh,
Yeah,
right. Of
Eddie from the
course. Yeah. Yeah.
Munsters.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh my
Eddie.
God, you brought Eddie from
Yeah.
the Munsters for my birthday."
That's hilarious.
Ironically, a couple weeks later, we're in LA playing the Nokia Theater, and it was Cosmo's birthday, and unfortunately, it was a bad day to be a lighting guy. They didn't have the right fixtures. They didn't, the lighting guy just kind of threw his hands up and walked away. Guy wound up losing his job over the whole thing, and it was a rough day for him. Follow spots. They never thought to get Clearcom or gel. I'm like, what the heck?
Jesus.
And it's spelled out very clearly, and we discussed it, very clearly during the advanced stuff. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, he's such a good guy, and
Yeah.
and what
No,
a career.
I can see you and Cosmo together. Like, it makes
Yeah.
sense to me, Cosmo's one of my favorite people. He's just such a great guy.
And who has a
and,
better collection of Hawaiian shirts?
I don't know that I'd call it better. Like, more extensive, perhaps.
Yeah,
But
there you go.
who wants to wear Hawaiian
Yeah.
shirts other than him?
Yeah.
But yeah. So your health, I mean, so it's completely right now. It's completely, I wouldn't say remission, but it's controlled.
Yes. It's as best I can. Like I said, I had to learn to live with it. A lot of dietary changes.
Yeah.
One of the
Which
biggest.
is good. I mean, that's good for longevity, anyways.
Yeah, very true. Very
we
true.
all have to
And-
change sooner or later.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, very true. And it's funny. A couple of years back, in 23, I was doing a show with STP at a festival, and I had to have a stagehand come over. I said, "I got to spike the front edge of the stage for the guy." And I said, "There's no polite way of putting it. The older I get, the further away that gets." And he goes, "Well, that's a good thing, right?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You're further away from the dirt." I went, "Oh, smart man."
yeah.
extra donut for you.
Yeah. You know
Yeah,
what though? Your mind is so incredibly sharp still, obviously at 64. Like not everyone is like that. I know mine I've had to work on, like some of my memory things and stuff aren't as good as they used to be. And I pay very close attention to it, always have, because my mom has dementia and has for many years now. And so I've paid very close attention to that. But I also pay attention to people who are as old or older than me who have very sharp minds. And I try to pay attention to, how did you get there? Like, why is your mind so sharp? And,
right. Well,
I,
and let's face it, a lot of it's, we talked earlier about you running into Jake Berry and having to talk with him. And,
yeah,
he's older than I am, and he's still right there.
yeah,
No problem.
yeah.
I have a
Very
few,
sharp. Yeah.
issues, and dementia runs in my family as well.
Yeah.
And I had one of the assistants that I work with Slash. He, he told me a story of somebody come up, man, that guy's got a lot of stories. And he goes, yeah, well, the good news is, Quake's had an amazing career, and the good news is he paid attention. I said, well, I
Yeah.
don't have a lot of stories. He goes, wait a minute. The storyteller does. I said, no, I'm only telling you one story, mine.
Yeah.
He's
That
like,
makes
what?
sense.
I said, dementia runs in my family. So when I'm in my 80s, you're going to be able to tell me all these stories back. Or better yet,
Yeah.
when you show up at my funeral and they say, all right, who wants to tell a good Quake story? Hopefully you stand up and do it,
Yeah.
So
I mean, my only benefit is I get to record all of these stories because a lot of times I forget, like I will forget. Like somebody will say, yeah, I was on your podcast before. And I'll go, really? Like, I don't even remember that. And it sounds disrespectful, but it's just, I've got
oh yeah,
350 podcasts now or
yeah.
something.
How do you keep
So,
track of that? And
it's a
it
lot.
happens. It also happens to me when, one of the things I've been blessed with is that, first off being a memorable name, a bandana and a fanny pack. And I'll go into venues and, that young man, Tyler, picked up on it. He goes, stagehands come up and say, hey, Quake.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've been working
such
these
a good
places for
trait.
years.
Yeah.
And why do they remember me? Because I
Yeah.
wasn't an asshole to them.
Yeah.
And
That's such a good trait though. Like treating the janitor as well as you treat the CEO or whatever, like that to me
yeah,
is
yeah.
such a great trait.
No,
Just
absolutely.
being kind to people.
Yeah. And it's funny that when you talk about your memory and stuff like that, I had a little discussion with Slash earlier this year about what happened when I first went to work for him back with Snake Pit days. He had a heart issue, and I'm the guy that figured it out. And I wanted to tell him, especially when I got diagnosed and told I only had a couple of years to live, I wanted to tell him what happened because he had his ex-wife's version. I wanted to tell him my side and let him sort it out. And he called me back, and he's like, it's amazing what you remembered. And he goes, I talked to so many people that were around back then, and they're like, oh, no, he's spot on. He goes, how do you remember this? I said, and this is another part of the reason why I can't sleep. As I explained to him, I said, I've relived those days 100 times if I've relived them once. And same thing with the plane crashes, the bus crashes, all that. It just runs through my head constantly, and I remember being a young kid and having somebody say that, he who forgets his mistakes makes the same mistake again, and that's kind of stuck in my head too. But yeah, it's, I'm just fortunate that I'm 64. I can still hear.
Yeah.
I can still mix. I can still organize.
Are your ears still really good when it comes to mixing sound?
Do you find I've lost a bit of high end.
High end is falling off a bit. Yeah.
Years ago, when I was doing the Cars reunion, the last show we did was Lollapalooza, and we had a different monitor guy sitting in. It was the guy that mixed Dave Matthews there, and unfortunately passed away earlier this year. And he was working with Mike Santucci from Sensophonics, trying to develop a home hearing test. He says, so take it to your hotel room, do it in the room, and then go in the bathroom and see if how much the differences are. And I brought it back to him the next day, and I said, yeah, it works pretty good. And he goes, what were your numbers? I said, it works pretty good. He goes, you're not going to tell me, are you? I said, no, by the way, I figured out how to erase the memory too. I do have a bit of hearing loss, but it's not terrible.
You know what's really good is the newest AirPods from Apple. If you have the newest software on the phone and the newest software in the AirPods, you can do a really good hearing test. And
Oh,
then
wow.
it can do, like, they've basically got some practically hearing aid functions in it where it'll
Right.
boost different frequencies or cut
As you
out
need.
certain
Yeah.
frequencies or whatever. So Apple really is paying attention to some of
Yeah.
those things
Yeah.
and
Which
doing
is
some
good.
health
And
related things. Yeah.
yeah, which I know
Yeah.
Lord knows with all the loud guitar players I've worked with, I know several of them that are wearing in-ears now that
Yeah.
had to have them custom adjusted to them for their hearing loss,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they could hear things in the right way.
Yeah.
And
For me,
they're
it
like,
was I remember exactly when I lost the sort of high frequency in my hearing. I played in rock bands,
uh
and one time we were somewhere in northern Canada, somewhere in some hotel, and we found out there was a jam session downstairs on Saturday afternoons, and so there was a country band playing, and me and I think maybe it was me and our drummer or something got up and played with this country band. And I was standing right in front of the steel guitar player's amp, and it
mm.
was at warp volume. And I didn't think anything of it. But ever since that day, and I was there for, I don't know, an hour and a half or something on stage, ever since that day, my hearing's never been the same. I just lost a bunch.
Oh yeah. Well, and
Steel guitar.
when I I also believe at my age that you should educate people. And one of the things I tell people is, if you walk away from a concert or you're working outside on with your mower or something and you hear that ringing in your ear,
Yeah.
that pitch is the pitch you're losing.
Yeah.
And
Really? I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Huh.
So, and it's funny, and it's, I'll pick on smart. It's one of the nice tools for me to have as an aging engineer because I can see how the PA is reacting. Okay, it's not too bright. Yeah.
So you're trusting that as much as you are your ears at
Yeah.
that point, I
Yeah.
guess.
Well, I
Yeah.
still, what's Owen Orzak from Eighth Day Claire made the comment to me one time. He goes, "Your mix is always warmer than anybody else's I've heard. You don't. Your high end is proportional,
Yeah.
and same thing with your low end. I don't hear anything sticking out on either side of that, which is one of the reasons. Speaking of bass players, why I got along so well with Phil Lesh when I worked for him,
Yeah.
because I mean, the guy's book was called Searching for the Sound, and
Yeah.
yeah, the first show, he comes in for sound check and he's going up and down his neck and he goes, 100's a little hot. Push up a little 125. Oh, that's good. Yeah. And seems like you got a little gap there at 80.
Interesting.
80
Yeah.
cycles, and I had an argument when I was working for Talos, and we haven't made up yet. So if you walk in and you see 80 cycles wiped out everywhere, guy with a red bandana and white hair, is he mixing? And he's on there.
That's hilarious.
But yeah,
But it's funny that a guy from a jam band like that would be so interested in or so
yeah.
knowledgeable about that, the
Yeah, and
sounds like that.
ironically, he didn't start. He wasn't a bass player when he started playing, but
Oh, I didn't know
became
that
one of
either.
the legendary ones. And I had a guy named Phil Garfinkel who worked for Audix. He came out to several of the Phil Lesh shows, and he goes, "You're like the sound guy to the bass players." I started my career with Billy Sheehan. I then did Stu Ham for a brief period of time, Juan
Wow.
Alderete from Mars Volta, Les Claypool, and Phil
Jeez.
Lesh. And I tell
Yeah.
everybody there's only one bass player out of that bunch. And they're like, "What?" I said, "Phil." I
Yeah.
said, Billy Sheehan was a frustrated guitar player. Um,
Yeah.
Stu Ham was just playing out of his mind. Juan Alderete had the biggest pedal board I've ever seen. Les Claypool is a percussion player with strings,
Yeah.
and Phil was the king of that walking bass line.
Yeah. I always I don't know why you say Stu Ham's out of his mind. I was a huge fan. What was it Satriani that he played with?
Mhm.
Yeah, I loved him in Satriani in the old days. He just the groove that he held at the bottom end
Yeah,
was just
yeah,
so great. You
yeah.
know, he
But
he
it's
just had such a groove.
yeah. And I was very young. I did the world's most dangerous band with for crying out loud, Omar Hakim and Willie. And
Yeah,
two guys that just locked. I mean,
yeah,
just bam, it just fell
absolutely.
there.
Yeah,
And they were
absolutely.
incredible, and having Paul
Yeah,
Schaefer and
yeah,
Hiram Bullitt playing with them
yeah.
was amazing. And it's funny because for 4 years straight, Rochester, New York, believe it or not, has a Rochester Music Hall of Fame. It's not just Lou Gramm,
Hmm.
or Chuck Mangione. There's a
Yeah,
lot of other people.
yeah.
And one year they
I
were
didn't know
putting.
Chuck was from
Oh yeah,
there.
Yep,
Oh,
Chuck
I
is from
didn't know that.
Rochester. The company that I work for was built around Chuck back in the 70s. This guy was his front of house guy and, started putting a company together. Next thing you know, he's running lights and, got another guy to do sound. But yeah, and he moved on from there. Northeastern was actually one of the first touring sound and lighting companies doing the whole thing.
Huh.
Back in the days of like Clare Brothers and stuff like that, just starting out, and Northwestern. But we're doing I was doing the Hall of Fame the first year. They were putting in Wendy O. Williams, and I had very short hair, and I show up, and the two people that were producing the thing, this guy Tony Gross. Tony used to be the guitar player in Head East, and he owns a studio here in Rochester. And Bruce Pilato. Bruce manages Carl Palmer, Yes, Asia, a bunch of bands like that. And they're like, this is Wendy O. Williams and the Plasmatics. Are you sure you're going to be able to handle this? And the owner of the company goes, I know you got your resume with it. Just hand it to him. Here you go. And they took a look and went, what are you doing this for? I said, time and a half on a Sunday. But the first year, it went a little rough. Their stage manager, who was normally a realtor, didn't know that you have to check with the sound guy before you say sound check's over. And the next year, they were putting in the Campbell Brothers gospel group, and the Campbell Brothers play pedal steels, and they had Robert Randolph sitting with them. And we're playing Kodak Hall at the Eastman Theater, and it's designed for an orchestra. And, sound check goes okay. I'm like I've actually got a couple of things in the PA, none of the pedal steels, but they come out for the set, or for their 3 songs that they did. And the first thing I see is Robert put everything on 10. So then here goes the Campbell Brothers. And now it's stun off the stage. It was like having Slash, Steve Vai, and Mark Tremonti all playing in the same band together. And they're playing through Fender Twins on a pedal steel. And people are coming up, you're disrespecting the Eastman. Ma'am, I'm off. The only thing in the PA is the kick drum. And,
that's hilarious.
The next year, they were putting in one of the horn players from Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And his best friend was Paul Schaefer. Now, I had gotten a call 2 weeks earlier to go do Paul's tour, and I had to turn it down because I forget who
I didn't know
doing it.
Paul toured.
He was at the time. Just, he does a handful of dates back then.
Yeah.
And he shows up, and Bruce and Tony, good to see you, sir. I'm Bruce Pilato, Tony Gross. And yeah, that's great. Where the hell's Quake? And I'm walking across the stage. You son of a bitch. Sorry, Paul. And Quake? And he goes, well, yeah, he mixed the world's most dangerous band when he was 20 years old. And I just tried to get him to do my tour and stuff. And they're like, wow, we got to look at you in a different light. Well, the next year, they're putting in Steve Gadd and Tony Levin.
Oh.
And we had the big meeting before the thing, and they're like, well, we got a special guest coming in to sit in with them, but we can't tell you his name, and he's got some pretty specific requirements. I said, he wants an SM58 and a Countryman DI. I've already talked to him, and I told him you're getting a Radial JDI, and I'll bring you one of my 58s, so it's a brand new setup. And they're like, what? I said, first off, do you think I'm an idiot? What's Steve Gadd's most famous drum beat? Boom. 50 Ways to Lose Your Lover.
Yeah.
Number 1.
Funny.
Number 2, he's managed by the guy that manages the Cars and Bob Dylan. And the guy's a friend of mine. He called me up to ask me if I could take care of him while he's here. I said, well, ironically, I'm the sound guy for the show. So
That's
same
funny.
thing happens. Paul walks in, Tony Gross, Bruce Pilato. And great. Where's Quake? Oh, that's him. Oh, hi, Quake. Oh, Mr. Simon, good to meet you. And so, everything went really well. But,
that's cool.
Yeah. And events like that are a lot of fun because I'm not just mixing your standard rock band. One year they had a string quartet, and I took 2 414s and put them between the string players.
Yeah.
Like, that's not going to be enough. Go away. And during the whole thing, the Bruce and Tony are standing behind me going, it sounds amazing. I'm like, Kiss, keep it simple, stupid. They have a band called Primetime Funk from here in Rochester, and they've got an amazing horn section that plays with them. And they're like, the way you deal with your horns and stuff. I said, I grew up, my old man was a horn player, and I grew up with horns all the time. And, you get to mix a variety. And, here again, working for this local company all summer long, I'm doing the opening act for the Thursday and the Square shows and stuff like that, but at least I'm getting to do something.
It sounds like you do as much production management as you do mixing, though, right?
These days, yes. The majority of my tours, I'm usually both.
Yeah.
I've
Do you
done.
prefer that?
I tell folks the only fun I have the whole day is the 2 hours behind the desk.
Yeah.
The rest of it is just a means to an end. As a production manager, I trust myself,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And,
Yeah.
I've learned enough on what not to do.
Yeah.
And when in 1990, I was hired to be the front of house guy for Jane's Addiction.
Yeah.
And we start the tour after we did a couple of shows. Then we had to take a break so I could get married and go on a quick 3-day honeymoon. And I
Yeah.
flew over to Europe, and we're in Europe, and Ted Gardner is like, "Bloody hell, I've known you for years, but I'd never seen your CV. Can you give me your CV resume?" So I give him my resume, and he comes back and he goes, "Bloody hell, you've got all this management experience." Because when I met him, I was the production manager for a band called Keel and front of house guy.
Yeah.
And he was working with Yngwie. Now,
Wow.
Ron Keel is the guy that brought Yngwie Malmsteen to the U.S. And
Yeah.
those two were like gasoline in a lit match. They
Yeah.
don't put them anywhere. I said, "Well, you keep your guy over there. I'll keep my guy over here." And so he's like, "Well, and then I went on to production manager Stacy Q, and then I started doing Dangerous Toys as tour manager and front of house guy. And he says,
I
"Well,
remember those really early Yngwie days when Jim Yakubuski used to be a club
Yep.
sound guy in Alberta, where I was from, and I was good friends with Jim back then. And I remember he got a gig with like D&B or something, or DB Sound.
DB Sound, yep.
And they end up putting him on Yngwie as the monitor guy. And, at the time he was like, it's fun, but it's the hardest gig I've ever done. Like,
Yep.
Can you imagine being Yngwie's monitor guy? Jesus.
Oh, yeah. And now it's funny.
Nobody else hears anything other than guitar. Every monitor has guitar coming through it at 10.
Yeah. I'm stunned. And,
yeah.
And now it's funny because I did a few shows for DB Sound back in the day. Harry Witz was the front of house guy for Triumph. Canadian band. And
it's funny because Gilmore is texting me while if you see me typing, it's because Gil, the drummer from Triumph, is texting me as I'm
Tell
talking
us they want to fire
you.
a front of house guy, a good one. Cool. Well, he something happened in Harry's family. He had to take a few days off. So I had to fly out and fill in for him. And I'd only met Harry a few times coming through town. I want to say I had mixed Rick Derringer when I had met him. And Jim Holman was the systems engineer. Yakubuski and Bruce Knight were the two fly guys. And every morning I'd come in, well, let's do this. Want it done like that. And a few years go by, and now Yakubuski is in every magazine, talking about this, talking about that. I'm like, yeah, he's done really good for himself. And Bruce was the front of house guy for Sheryl Crow for quite a while, and he kept threatening to leave if they didn't give him salary. And every time he threatened to leave, they go, "Well, we already sent Quake the plane ticket." So it's like, oh boy, playing me against him. And Jim was out as the systems engineer for Bob Dylan, and they let their front of house guy go. And have you ever mixed front of house? Well, yeah. And he goes, "You're up." It went out as an ultrasound tour, and I was still with ultrasound at the time. And they were having some problems with Jim.
Yeah.
So I showed up at a show in Rochester, took a look at what he was doing, and at the end of the show, we were chatting and stuff. And I said, "What did you paid me a great compliment at the end of the tour. Do you remember what that was with Triumph?" And he goes, "No, I don't." And I said, "You said thank you because every morning you're in here, you're telling us what you want and how you want it done. So what are you not doing here?" And he looked at me kind of sideways. I said, "Jim, I'm just going to be polite and say, your management company had a name engineer come in. Get your head out of your butt or I'm going to be your solution." Are we clear? And the production manager calls me up like 4 or 5 days later. He goes, "What'd you tell him?" I said, "The truth." He goes, 180-degree, completely different person. He's wonderful.
Wow. That was a good early career education.
Sometimes you just got to say, don't, people are so afraid. When I went and filled in on Dr. We don't want this guy to find out. Well, okay, fair enough. Well, don't call any of the venues because, so naturally what did I do? I called the first 3 venues because I knew the people, and said, just don't tell the other guy, but I'm replacing him. What has he got set up? I'm not going to try and reinvent the wheel here. But, that
makes a huge amount of sense.
Yeah. And,
Uh,
and I've had several conversations with Pooch and Toby about, guys our age needing to pay it forward to the younger generation. And I
yeah.
tell folks this all the time. I said, there's photos of me rigging at the University of Buffalo. Um, we would climb the beam, side of the beam, climb out hand over hand. There's no harness. We build a little basket out of some straps, throw a rope over, catch yourself into a carabiner and tighten it up and tie yourself and pull the points up. Because back
Jesus.
then, the University of Buffalo, their arena, when it originally got built, didn't take into account snow load, so they could only have X amount of weight up. And we get down to the last point to pull the last speaker cabinet up. We were doing their commencements with the local company I was with. And
Yeah.
I'd have to send the other guy down because I was the biggest guy in the company, pull the point, and then they'd have to hold the rope for like 5 minutes while my arms went, okay, we're okay. But I said, and, hand over hand, back to that beam and shimmy down that
Funny.
beam, and you're welcome. And the kids go, what? I said, I did that so you don't have to. You now have safeties and harnesses and
Yeah.
regulations and stuff. And I said, we used to work all day, drive the truck all night, work all day, drive the truck all night. Bit of it was chemical enhancement. The other thing was we all had long hair. You roll the window down, put your hair in the window. Every time you nodded, pulled your hair. I blame my bald
Oh,
spot on
that's
that.
funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it
That's
worked
a
great.
good
And a
good
lot of
wake-up
young
call
people are like going,
system.
hey, this
Yeah.
works awesome. I'm like,
Yeah.
told you.
That's funny.
But, you don't have to do that anymore. And you're welcome because people like me went through that,
Well, I'd have to have my head right against the window if I was going to try and stick my hair out the window. It'd
Right.
be, I don't have much hair, so it's
Right.
about this long, it wouldn't be
Well,
that easy to do.
Now, a couple of weeks ago, we did a reunion with the company I used to work for in Buffalo. And we were talking about the fact that, first off, we've lost a lot of folks,
Yeah.
including the original two owners. And one of the original owners was a guy named Jim Peachy, and I replaced him with a band called Big Wheelie and the Hubcaps when I was 18 years old. 19 years
Wow.
old, the guys from Tallis came out to see me mix the Big Wheelie, and Mike was going to leave and go into management, and it came down to there was a guy named Randy Schul, who went on to be the front of house guy for Spyro Gyra, Jim Peachy, or me. And Peachy told him, if you don't take the kid, you're an idiot. So I owe my career to him. But we were also talking because out of that company, we had a guy named Gary Rosner who went on to become the vice president of entertainment services, Cat Power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike Reagan, who went on to become the business manager of the Hamilton Union. Now he just
Wow.
works as a hand. Rich Turn, who went on to become the guitar tech for Zebra and a couple of other bands. Ironically, no sound guys came out of my classes that I had there. But Mike Fechner, who started with me in the company. Mike went on to do Dolly Parton, Paul Rogers, Bad Company,
It's
Sheryl
a good
Crow.
group, huh?
Yeah.
Solid group.
Yeah. And
Wild.
they said, well, who's the most successful sound guy you know? And I said, this guy, Tony. Tony came in and basically replaced me in the company when I started touring. Gary Rosner talked me into leaving the company. He goes, you've done this and the company's doing that. Get out of here. I'm like, okay. But I said, the most successful guy is Tony. He's like, what? He hasn't done nearly anything like you and Fechner did. And I'm like, yeah, but he works in a club. He walks to work every day because it's about a block and a half from his house. He mixes 4 or 5 nights a week,
Yeah.
and he's happy.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. It doesn't
Isn't
matter.
it?
Playing the enormo dome isn't all it's cut out to be.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Some of the I don't know, I think if people are chasing money or whatever, some of the richest people I know are the most unhappy. That whole thing is
very
real,
true.
When
Very
you're
true.
doing something you love to do and you're doing it around people that you love to be around, just be happy, man.
Yeah.
You've won life at that point,
Right.
If you're where you want to be with the people you want to be and you're actually getting paid to do it, you've won.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Well,
even
and
if you're not making $1 million.
Yeah, and it's funny because when I went back to Slash in 24 there, Daughtry had made me a pretty sizable offer. And I turned it down and went back to Slash where I don't make as much money. But between the history with him and the way he treats me, number one, and the friendship we have, number two, and the fact that, I'm surrounded with great people. We're not there for the money. It's all about the music in that case. And there, so many times I've turned down that big tour because, well, I got to finish this one because I'm not going to jump just because you dangle money in front of me,
Yeah.
because it's not everything. So it is what you said. Sometimes being happy isn't that big money paycheck, and
No.
stuff. But
I mean, hey, everyone wants to be paid more or whatever, but the
yeah,
thing is, I've always found that when you get enough and you're happy doing what you're doing, just
yeah,
be happy.
yeah.
You'll
Allow
be
yourself.
miserable chasing
Yeah,
money.
allow yourself to be happy too, and
Oh,
that's another
absolutely.
thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I tell folks that when I first started working for Slash, he was one of the wealthiest people I had worked for, and the
Yeah.
most unhappy man I ever met.
Yeah. It's incredible, isn't it?
And now, first off, when I was talking to him back in January and stuff, I said, "Well, I only weigh this much now," and he goes, "Wow, so you weigh less than I did when I met you, and I weigh more than you do now." And I'm like, I want my body back,
Yeah.
because we
Yeah.
basically switched bodies and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Well, you know what? I'm really happy that you're healthy again and you're
thank you.
taking care of yourself and headed the right direction on that. And you're going to live at least till 75. And by then, God knows what AI is going to do for,
Yeah,
kidney disease or whatever. Like we're probably all going to live to 120, because of the advancements that come from AI
but
and
will we
stuff.
have
So.
anything to do?
Yeah. Well, and by the way, you're not going to need front of house people anymore because AI is going to handle
It's
that
going to push a
too. And
button and play.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, you
Well,
don't even
yeah,
push the button. Who needs to
yeah,
push a button?
yeah,
Buttons are for old guys.
yeah, yeah.
Buttons don't work anymore. Now, unfortunately, I have to wind this down because I actually have a meeting in about 7 minutes.
Oh,
So,
cool.
but I really appreciate you doing this, and I love hearing
Yeah,
all the
likewise.
updates in your life and your story and all that stuff. And hopefully, let me know what the tour is when you can announce it.
Okay,
Let me know what that is, and maybe I'll come out and see you somewhere and
sounds
shake
good.
your hand and say
Sounds
hello
good.
in
And
person for once.
by the way, folks, if you're not renting gear from Marcel, give me a call. I've got this company called Video West.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Well, I don't rent gear, so
uh,
you're winning there. I do a lot of business with Video West, and I like them. So,
yeah.
and I like
So,
Donnie.
okay,
Cool.
cool. Well,
Best of
thank you.
luck to you, and
All
take care of yourself for sure. Like health
right.
is more without it, you got nothing, obviously, right?
Yep, very
So,
true.
as you know,
All right,
yeah.
great to talk to you again, my friend.
All right, Quake. Thank you.
Yep, bye-bye.